They say a wedding is the start of everything new. A clean slate. A promise to leave the past behind and hold hands with hope for the future. That's what I thought the day my husband and I stood together, our faces close, surrounded by friends and family, soft music, and the kind of smiles you want to keep forever. I thought that day sealed everything bad and left it far behind us, outside those doors, lost in the cold where it belonged. But I was wrong. 7 years is a long time to live in a house and not notice the quiet ache that grows in someone else's heart. 7 years is a long time to feel something pressing between you and the one you promised to trust with your life. It was a small thing, really, ordinary. Sometimes I think the worst pain comes from small things, the forgotten coffee on the kitchen table, the silence on the drive home, or the little battered photo worn smooth at the edges, hidden in a wallet. I never wanted to look. We trust the little things. But one day, as I was folding laundry in the bedroom and my husband came in, I asked if he had any small change for the delivery guy. He tossed his wallet to me, smiling, and told me to check inside. That's how I saw her. A photograph so old, the colors fading, but the smile still shining out from another world. The same girl he had loved before me, the one I never met, the one I was told had left for good. I sat on the bed, cold with surprise. I knew I should put the photo back and close the wallet. My hand shook just a little. I wanted to believe it didn't mean anything, just an old memory, but a strange ache bloomed in my chest, because at that moment, I saw the truth. The part of his heart I thought was mine had never fully come home. I thought the wedding fixed everything, but he kept her photo in his wallet the entire 7 years we were married. And that is where our story truly begins. Before that day, before I found the photo and before I felt the ground shift beneath my heart, things seemed so ordinary. I want to tell you about those days, because sometimes the most important stories hide in plain moments. They never give you warnings. They walk softly through your house, washing dishes and folding towels, and they stay so quiet you hardly notice them at all. I met my husband, Arun, 8 years ago at a friend's wedding. He was not the loudest man in the room, not the one who told jokes or gathered attention. He moved gently, as if he was afraid to break the moment, and there was a careful way he listened to every word I said, no matter how simple. Maybe that's why I fell in love with him. He made everything feel safe. People said we matched. I liked books and rainy afternoons, warm bread from the market, and peaceful evenings. He liked the same things, or so I thought, sitting together at the window, talking about dreams that didn't need fixing, just sharing. After we got married, we moved into a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a faded building close to the city park. I loved that place. It had old wooden floors that creaked as you walked, and a tiny kitchen that could barely fit us both. I joked that the walls were thin enough to let in the neighbors' worries but strong enough to keep out the world. We set up our life with simple, second-hand things, a couch from my aunt, mismatched plates, cheap curtains fluttering in the evening breeze. Nothing fancy, but those things became precious to me because they were ours, our beginnings. I worked at the local library, and he worked in a small travel agency, helping people find places they'd never been and probably would never go. We shared a small car, argued sometimes about groceries or which movie to watch, but nothing ever felt impossible. Even when money was tight, we found ways to laugh. Our families were close, though not without their secrets. His mother, gentle and always carrying rosary beads in her hand, would call every Sunday. She loved telling stories about Arun as a boy, about how shy he'd been, how her heart swelled the day he brought me home for supper. My parents looked at Arun as a gift, steady, respectful, someone they could trust with their only daughter. Sometimes, in those early days, a shadow would cross his face in the middle of our nicest moments. Once, while we drank tea by the window after a long day, I saw him gazing at the rain, lost somewhere far from me. I asked softly, "What's on your mind, Arun?" He gave a half smile. "Just thinking old thoughts," he said. I let it pass, thinking everyone has moments of remembering. We attended weddings of friends, saw them have children, bought little gifts for their anniversaries. Everyone around us seemed so certain, so sure of their love. I sometimes wondered if our quiet peace was enough, but Arun would squeeze my hand, and I believed it was. There were times I felt a little lonely, even in his arms. It is hard to explain this kind of loneliness, the kind that grows, not from being alone, but from being next to someone who isn't quite all the way there. I would reach out to him in the night, hoping he would pull me closer, and sometimes he did. Other times, he turned away, and I told myself it was only sleep. Our friends celebrated their news loudly, house purchases, pregnancies, weekends away. We didn't have children. It just didn't happen. I tried not to let it hurt, but deep down I wondered if there was something missing in me. Arun never complained. He said, "Our home is enough," and he kissed my forehead. But I saw the way his eyes sometimes lingered on children in the park, and it broke my heart in a way I never told anyone. The years moved on in their slow, measured way. Seasons changed, calendars filled and emptied. We marked each little anniversary with the same meal, tomato soup and toasted bread, sitting on the balcony even if the air was too cold. On weekends, we visited the city market, picking through fruit and flowers. He would sometimes buy a single lily and put it in a cup on the table, saying, "Just for luck." I kept every stem until it withered, pressing the petals in old books until the pages were stained with their memory. There was once a family gathering, his cousin's engagement. We arrived late because I'd misplaced a scarf and Arun had spent the morning searching for it. When we finally got there, everyone was dancing and laughing. I noticed his mother watching us, smiling with a kind of gentle sadness. Later that night, she pulled me aside and whispered, "He's lucky to have you. He's had some sadness, you know, but you are good for him." I asked Arun what she meant, but he only shook his head and kissed my cheek. "She worries too much," he said. Life carried us along. The little apartment began to feel like ours in every way. My favorite lamp in the corner, his favorite mug by the sink. Sometimes we would listen to old music, and sometimes dance in the kitchen. conversation, slow and quiet, the world closed off behind the locked door. But there was always that small distance, a room between us that was never entered, a soft wall built out of memories I didn't understand. It truly was a gentle life, safe, quiet, held together by routines and little kindnesses. If you had asked me a year before, I would have said I was content. I thought Arun was, too. Now and then, a friend would mention his past, just a name, spoken like a gust of wind that blew through the conversation and disappeared. I never asked much, because I wanted to believe our love was enough. I thought love could heal any wound, replace any goodbye. If I could go back to those days, knowing what I know now, I would have asked more questions. I would have listened harder. I would have leaned into the silences instead of letting them pass. But you cannot see the cracks when everything is covered with sunshine. You cannot imagine the rain until it's already falling on your roof. So we lived quietly, gently, holding on to each other as best we could, not knowing the fault line was already there, slowly, quietly, waiting. Looking back now, it was never one big moment that shattered my peace. It was a collection of small moments, tiny details that slowly filled my heart with questions I didn't know how to ask. Life kept moving forward, yet something underneath was quietly unraveling. It started with the little things, the unspoken hesitations, the pauses in conversation. At first, I thought I was just imagining it. Sometimes, when Arun came home late from work, he would greet me with his usual gentle smile, but his eyes would drift past mine, like he was searching for someone else in the room. I tried not to mind. I made his favorite dinner more often, dal with a touch of extra lemon, the way he liked. He would thank me, take a few bites, and look lost in thought. I'd ask, long day? He would nod, yes, just work. So many bookings today. I smiled and let it go. People get tired. Work is hard. Maybe life was just busy. But sometimes, I would find him quietly paging through old photo albums late in the evening. I could hear him from the hallway, the soft hush of pages turning, the gentle sigh of memory. When I would join him, he'd quickly close the album and smile, as if caught doing something he shouldn't. What are you looking for? I'd ask. He'd answer, just old pictures, nothing special. Good memories help me sleep. These small secrets became a background music in our home. There was no fighting, no arguments, only silence, and sometimes that is much heavier. One rainy afternoon, while he showered, I picked up his phone to turn off an alarm that was beeping. The screen was open to a message, an old one, unread. I saw a name I didn't recognize. Nina. Something inside me trembled. Logic tried to reassure me. Maybe it was family, or work contact. He never hit his phone. Still, I wondered. A week later, I was setting the table for dinner. Plates clinked softly. I tried to start a conversation. Arun, do you miss anyone from your past? He looked surprised, then distant again. Everyone misses someone, he said quietly. Is there someone you think of often? I pressed gently. He stirred his rice and finished chewing before answering. Sometimes. It's nothing I want to talk about. The past is gone, yes? He smiled, but I felt the door closing between us. I tried to brush it away, but the thought kept growing. That night, as rain tapped softly against the window, I stayed awake listening to his calm breathing beside me. I wondered, if I reached inside his dreams, would I find myself there, or someone else? Days blurred together, brightened only by small routines. I found myself looking for clues, though I hated being suspicious. One morning, as he left for work, he forgot his lunch on the counter. I rushed down the stairs after him, calling his name. He turned, and I nearly bumped into him. He looked surprised, then a little flustered. Thank you, you're a lifesaver. His wallet slipped from his hand, falling open on the street, but he quickly grabbed it and shoved it into his jacket. An ordinary moment, but the way he picked it up, too quickly, too protective, made my heart ache. At work, I started drifting through the days. My coworkers noticed. You seem tired. Everything okay at home? I'd smile, just not sleeping well. Maybe the weather. But it wasn't the weather. It was a slow leak inside me, a growing need to know if our love was heavy enough for both our hearts. Sometimes, when we visited his family, his mother watched me closely. When he wasn't in the room, she would take my hand and ask, is he happy? Does he talk to you? I never knew how to answer. He's quiet, but we're okay. She would just pat my hand, her eyes soft with worry. I tried to bring back our closeness. I suggested a weekend trip, just the two of us. We planned it, but he seemed distracted the whole time. We sat in a little cafe, old music playing. I reached across the table and touched his hand. Arun, are you happy with me? He looked at me, really looked at me, for a long moment. I am, he said finally, but sometimes, I wish I could change the past. It was the first time he'd ever said such a thing. I thought maybe it was about not having children, or about something else I couldn't guess. That night in the hotel room, he stared out the window, quiet as always. When we got home, I tried to bury my questions. I cleaned more, cooked more, tried to make him laugh and remember the reasons we'd built this life together. But no matter how much effort I poured out, something remained missing. Then there was the closet. I was cleaning one day, the bedroom heavy with afternoon sun, when I found a small box tucked away on the top shelf. Inside were some old letters tied with a faded ribbon. They weren't mine. I sat down on the edge of the bed, breath shallow. The words were soft, written in delicate handwriting. With love always, yours, Nina. He had kept them all these years. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark watching the shadow of his face on the pillow. I wanted to ask, but my mouth wouldn't open. I was afraid of the answer. The next morning, I put the box back where I found it, not sure if it was better to keep the secret or force the truth into the light. I became quieter in those days. He noticed, asked if I was unwell. I'm just tired, Arun. He made me tea, sat beside me, quiet as usual. One evening, I saw him staring at the little lily on the table, brow furrowed. I asked, what are you thinking about? He answered, just life. How quickly it goes. We sat in silence, the sounds of the world fading through the window. I wondered if he wanted to talk, or if he was afraid, like I was, was that any conversation would break apart what little peace we had left. Little things began to disturb me. The way he held his wallet so close. The messages he never mentioned. Even the way he said my name, soft but distant, as if it was a habit he could never completely claim as his own. One Sunday, my parents came to visit. My mother noticed right away. She whispered later in the kitchen, "Are you both alright? You seem far away from each other." I smiled, stirring the soup. "We're fine, just busy." But the lie felt sharp in my mouth. Rain fell that night, and the city glowed with silver street lights. After my parents left, Arun stood by the window, silent. The room felt small. I went to him, held his hand. "We've built a life together, haven't we?" I said, quietly. He squeezed my hand, his thumb tracing patterns on my skin. "Yes, I'm grateful for you, always." But I could feel it, the threads unraveling, bit by bit. Sometimes I watched him, wondering, is it possible to give everything to someone and still have a peace they can never hold? The next day, I borrowed his jacket before going out. It was cold. In the pocket, I found a small photograph wrapped in tissue paper. It was a picture of the same young woman, long hair, bright smile. I wanted to storm into the room. I wanted to shout, but my voice, when I finally spoke, surprised me. "Who is she, Arun?" He stared for a long moment, then looked away. "She was the girl I loved before you," he said softly. I waited, breath held. There was no goodbye. One day, she just disappeared. It broke me. For a long time, I put the photo down on the table gently. Why keep her picture? He closed his eyes for a moment. Because in some way, I could never let go. I thought I had. I tried. My heart felt crushed, but part of me understood. "Do you still love her?" He shook his head, but not with certainty. "I don't even know what love is anymore. I hated her for leaving, but I kept her memory." "I'm sorry." I left the room, closed the door behind me, and stood in the hallway where the world was quiet. That night at dinner, we didn't speak much. The clink of our forks echoed in the room. For days after that, I walked around the house as if I carried a wound no one else could see. I went to the market, to work, came home, cooked dinner, moved through my routines. But inside, I was unraveling. Whenever I tried to talk, Arun would say, "Let's not go back there. Let's move forward." But I could not when I knew his heart was still living in a place before me. We stopped celebrating anniversaries. The soup and bread felt tasteless. My laughter, and his, became rare and scattered, like sunshine between endless clouds. Sometimes, I cried in the shower, letting the water hide the sound. Sometimes, I lay awake, listening to the slow ticking of the clock by our bed, willing time to go backwards. In the silence, we both suffered. He tried to be kind, doing small things, bringing me tea, offering to help more around the house, but I could see it in his eyes. A tired worry, a gentle sorrow. Eventually, something changed in me. I started talking to friends more, going for walks after work, finding reasons to be away from home. I needed air, needed room to think. The apartment, which once felt warm and safe, became heavy. The walls seemed to press in, holding memories that no longer brought comfort but only quiet pain. So, this is how the conflict grew, not from shouting or blame, but from quiet heartbreak, from love that tried but could not mend what was quietly broken. And all the while, outside our window, the world moved on, rain falling, children laughing in the park, neighbors living their stories. And inside, my heart waited for what would come next, too afraid to let go, but too hurt to hold on. Change can come quietly. Sometimes, the day your life shifts is just an ordinary morning. You wash your face, make the tea, and have no idea your world is about to move in a way it never has before. It was like that for me. I woke up to the faint sound of rain at the window. The world outside was gray and gentle, the street blurry through the glass. Arun slept beside me, his arm heavy across the bed. I watched him for a moment. There was a line between his eyebrows, a kind of small frown, even as he dreamed. For the first time in many weeks, he looked peaceful. I almost reached out to touch his hair, but I held back. My heart felt tired. That morning, I moved carefully, not wanting to disturb anything, not the air, not the silence. In the kitchen, I made tea for both of us. The steam curled up in the weak morning light. The apartment was extra quiet. No news on, no music playing. I set his cup at his usual spot. He came out in pajama pants, rubbing his eyes. "Morning," he said, in that soft voice I still loved. "Morning," I replied, managing a smile. We sat together in the kitchen. Nothing dramatic, just two people, on different sides of something invisible. That morning, I saw his phone vibrate. It almost fell off the edge of the table, and, as if by habit, he reached for it too quickly. Usually, I'd look away, but not this time. The name glowing on the screen, Nina. Again, he saw me looking but didn't say anything. Instead, he stood up, walked into the other room, and closed the door quietly, leaving his tea untouched. I sat there, my hands wrapped around my cup, as outside the rain tapped lightly against the glass, steady and soft. A few minutes turned into half an hour. I heard only quiet from the other side of the door. Something in my heart broke then, not with a loud sound, but a small ache, the kind that leaves you more empty than sad. When Arun finally returned, I was still at the table, staring at nothing. "I'm going out for a while," he said. I nodded. "Okay." He took an umbrella from the stand, put on his shoes, and then paused at the door. For a heartbeat, it looked as if he might say something important, but he only shrugged and left, closing the door softly behind him. The echo of that closing door stayed with me. I sat in the silence, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt before. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Instead, I went to the bedroom, picked up the faded box of letters, and laid them on the bed. I read each one, slowly, every word feeling like cold water. She had written to him about dreams, about hope, about a future together. In her last letter, she had written, "Maybe the world will pull us apart. If it does, I will love you from wherever I am." Suddenly I understood. He had never really said goodbye to her. How could he ever truly welcome me, if one part of him kept waiting for her to return? The rain outside turned heavier. The world felt felt washed out, details smudged with sorrow. I sat on the bed, clutching a letter in each hand, the pain growing sharper inside me. Images for editor, soft rain against the window, gray light in the bedroom, close-up of hands shaking lightly as they hold old letters faded from years of being hidden away. I heard my phone ring somewhere in the hallway. I didn't answer it. Not right away. When I finally checked, I saw several unread messages from Arun. Sorry, don't wait up. Might be home late. I need some time. That was all. Short lines, typed quickly. I waited in the small apartment, the clock ticking too loudly. My mind spun in circles. Was he with her? Had he found a way to reach her again? Old fears from the past came flooding back. Was I never really his choice, only a placeholder until something better might return? As dusk fell, Arun still wasn't home. I sat at our kitchen table, the sky outside dark and heavy, lights flickering on across the city. I held the photograph I had found, her photograph, in my hand, tracing the edges. There was a time when I believed our wedding ring could replace any memory. Now, it pressed against my finger like a secret I could not change. It was well past midnight before I heard the door quietly unlock. The hallway filled with the hush of his footsteps, slow and hesitant. He stood in the kitchen doorway, hair damp from the rain, his eyes tired and rimmed with worry. Neither of us said anything for a long time. Finally, I spoke, my voice soft but steady. You saw her today, didn't you? He looked at me, searching for anger, maybe, or accusation, but there was only sadness in my face. Yes, he whispered. I saw her. The truth landed with no drama. Just tired words, honest for the first time in a very long while. He sat across from me, neither of us touching our tea. Images for editor, dim kitchen light, reflections of rain streaking down windows, 2 mugs left untouched, space wide between the couple at the table. I needed to know why she left, Arun said, voice barely audible. I needed to finish what I started with her. She agreed to meet me in the city, just to talk. She's married now. She has a little boy. I waited. I let him speak, because I needed to hear the whole truth, not just the part that fit easily into marriage. He took a shaky breath. She told me she left because she was scared. She didn't know how to be happy. She didn't think she deserved to love anyone, or be loved. He stared at his hands, restless. It broke me, yes, but sometimes I pretended I'd moved on, and I hadn't. I was always keeping her memory between us, even if I didn't know how much it hurt you. I nodded. Words felt heavy in my mouth, but I forced them out quietly. I always wondered if you would have chosen me, if she hadn't left. He looked up in surprise, pain and regret clear in his eyes. I don't know, he admitted, but I did choose you, in the end. I brought too much of my old story with me. The clock on the wall ticked away the tiny silences between our words. Outside, a car splashed through puddles, its headlights wandering across the ceiling. Images for editor, reflected lights, close focus on hands folded, then separating, slow camera pan across the quiet table. Finally, I asked, so what happens now? He stared at me, searching for answers we didn't have. I'm sorry, he said again. I don't want to hurt you anymore. Maybe I should go stay with my brother for a while. Give you space. I nodded, feeling strangely calm. It didn't feel like a fight or a break. It felt like something gentle but final, a curtain falling at the end of a long play. He packed a bag without looking back. I stood at the front door, watching as he put on his old jacket and shoes. Our eyes met for a long moment. I did love you, he said softly, in my own broken way. I nodded, holding back tears. I know. I tried to love all your broken parts, too. He reached out, hesitated, and then gently squeezed my hand. If I could go back, he started, but I stopped him. No, we only ever get to go forward. He nodded, lips pressed tightly together. Then he turned and left, closing the door quietly behind him. The apartment felt suddenly larger, empty in a new way. Images for editor, door slowly closing, hallway lights glowing softly, a woman standing alone in silence, small suitcase rolling away. I stood there for a long time, listening to the silence. Rain still tapped softly at the windows. I walked through the rooms, touching the things we had gathered together, blankets, photographs of us at friends' weddings, the pressed lilies in the old books. None of it felt the same. Hours passed. Dawn pressed against the city, pale and quiet. I made myself tea, drank it alone for the first time in years. The taste was different. Later, I sat at the family table, with his wallet on the wood in front of me. I opened it one last time. Her photograph was gone. Instead, I found a small note folded inside. I am sorry. Forgive me. Try to remember the good parts of us. I pressed the note to my chest, feeling both anger and relief. The grief was huge, but below it, I felt something gentle, acceptance. That day, his mother called. She must have known something. Her voice was worried, but soft. Is everything all right, Beta? I told her the truth, quietly, honestly. He's gone to stay with his brother. We need time apart. She was silent for a while, then said, you are stronger than you know. Sometimes love is only about letting people go. If he comes back one day, you will still be brave. I thanked her and hung up. For a few days, the emptiness in the apartment grew sharper. The kitchen was too quiet, the bed too big. But I also felt something in me begin to open, a new piece, made of truth rather than old hope. Images for editor, light through a window, a woman sitting quietly with a cup, soft focus on a simple ring on her hand, the sound of distant traffic and morning routines. I realized that, for the first time in our marriage, everything was finally out in the open. We had nothing left to hide. I spent that afternoon writing a letter, to no one in particular. I wrote about all the ways I tried to be enough and all the ways I'd been broken. I wrote about how love does not always mean you get chosen, but it does mean you choose yourself. As I finished the letter, I felt the urge to cry, but also to smile. Because underneath the sadness, a quiet strength was growing. I had survived love's hardest lesson, that sometimes, no matter how much we give, the person we love is simply not ready to receive it. For the first time in 7 years, my story was my own. That first week after Arun left, I moved slowly through the days. Nothing was urgent anymore. anymore. The apartment felt hollow, every sound more noticeable, but also, somehow, there was less fear in the air. I felt exposed and relieved all at once, as though a heavy curtain had lifted and now I could see my life for what it really was. At first, I kept busy with routines so I wouldn't fall apart. I woke up, changed the sheets, and filled the kitchen with the scent of lemon soap. I walked to the market, said polite hellos, and even tried once to bake bread by myself, something I'd never done without his quiet help. The quiet was harder in the evenings. I ate at the kitchen table, alone. His chair stayed empty. Sometimes I set a cup across from me out of habit, but I learned to put it away again. The chair became just a chair, not a symbol. On the third night, the silence got to me. I sat on the bed folding old clothes that belonged to both of us. My hands found his shirt, soft and worn at the collar. I pressed it to my face and cried quietly, not because I wanted things to return as before, but because I finally understood how much I'd tried and how little I'd shared of my own truth. Images for editor. Gentle lamplight in a bedroom, hands folding a shirt, a small pile of clothes, quiet rain beyond the window, close-up of a face wet with tears. After a while, I washed my face and opened the window. Sounds from the city filled the room, children playing, distant music, the ordinary world still turning while mine seemed paused. And I realized something. Even though our marriage had ended in sadness, my life was not over. One morning, I found the old box of lilies. Inside, pressed between the pages, were the faded petals from every anniversary and happy day we'd shared. I looked at each one, some so old they crumbled at my touch. For a long time, I simply sat there, breathing in the faint scent of what I'd tried so hard to keep alive. I took the box to the park we used to visit together, and, sitting on a quiet bench beneath a tree, I let the petals fall into the wind. They drifted away from me, small, soft reminders that the past would never return, but I could let it go gently, piece by piece. Time passed. I eased into my new routines. I read more, walked to work slowly, and made new friends from the neighborhood. Neighbors noticed I was alone and offered tea or stories. I found myself laughing, sometimes genuinely, and sometimes just to remember I still could. At the library, I spent my breaks talking to a new coworker, Mira. She was patient and kind, the sort of person who knows when not to ask questions. One afternoon, after closing, she gently said, "If you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here." I nodded, and we sat there in silence together, watching the world pass by outside the window. Some evenings, I wrote long letters to myself. Writing became a way to talk without hiding. I wrote about what I missed, what I wished I'd said, and what I hoped for. I found, surprisingly, that I was able to wish Arun well from afar, even if we'd never speak again. My heart wanted to be angry, but most of all, it wanted peace, for both of us. Images for editor. Warm desk lamp, a simple notebook open, pen moving slowly, soft smile on a tear-streaked face, night falling quietly outside a small apartment window. A few weeks later, Arun messaged me. The words were simple. "Are you alright?" I stared at his message for a long time before answering. "I am. Please take care of yourself." He replied, "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you find happiness." I said, "Thank you. I hope you do too." There was relief in those words, and finality. We were two people who had survived a storm, standing on different sides of the clearing, waving gently across the distance. After that, the space inside the apartment felt less heavy, as if forgiveness, even just a small one, could clear the air. His mother visited me, bringing sweets and soft words. She hugged me tight at the door, eyes full of apology and understanding. "I wanted you to know, you were a good wife. Sometimes, love comes with old wounds, but you helped him heal more than he will ever say." She left her blessing and her prayers with me that day, and for the first time, I felt their gentle weight as comfort instead of guilt. I began to see other parts of myself returning, old dreams I'd set aside, hobbies I'd forgotten. I started a small notebook where I wrote down things that made me happy, the sun on the wall after rain, the flavor of ripe pears, the kindness of a neighbor who left flowers at my door. Sometimes, I missed Arun, not with the sharp pain of the first days, but with a quiet nostalgia, like missing a favorite song you don't want to play again. Other times, I felt proud for living these days bravely, without needing someone else's love to define me. One Sunday morning, as light spilled into the kitchen, I realized I was humming to myself as I cooked. I smiled, because happiness came back in small doses, without warning or reason. I learned to welcome it. Months passed. I saw Arun once, by accident. He was on the other side of the street, talking to his brother, looking older and wiser in some way. We didn't speak, but our eyes met for a brief moment. There was no anger, only a quiet understanding, as if we both knew that our stories had gone where they needed to go. Spring returned to the city. I watched from my balcony as the trees grew new leaves, green and hopeful. Our apartment became mine alone, a place for my own life to take root. I took up painting again, filling small canvases with soft rain, bright flowers, and family tables. The process soothed me, each brushstroke a promise not to let my own story disappear. I let the walls become mine, full of color and memory. Images for editor. Brushes dipping in soft paint, close focus on hands creating gentle, hopeful art, a window glowing with morning sunlight, a houseplant thriving in the corner. There were nights when sadness returned, as it always does when you have loved deeply, but it didn't overwhelm me anymore. I learned it's alright to feel loss, as long as you keep moving forward. The biggest change, I think, was gentleness toward myself. I let myself grieve. I let myself hope. I let myself imagine new chapters one hadn't considered before. People would ask about Arun, and I answered simply, we both needed something we couldn't give each other. Most people nodded with sad eyes, but one old friend said, "You're braver than you know." Some people never admit when it's time to let go. At work, I grew more confident. At home, I kept the windows open more often, letting light and sound fill every room. I stopped expecting the past to change. I accepted the present, imperfect, soft but real. On the anniversary of our wedding, I decided not to cry. Instead, I invited Mira and a few friends from the library for tea. We laughed and shared stories, filling our table with new memories. I realized that family is sometimes the people you choose, not just the ones who enter your life by chance. Images for editor. Friends gathered at a small table, laughing, teacups clinking, soft afternoon light illuminating gentle faces, a sense of warmth and homecoming. Some months later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Arun. He didn't ask for another chance. He simply wrote to thank me for loving him, for trying, and for all the years we shared, even if his heart hadn't been whole. I read the letter slowly, let the words settle in my chest, and then placed it next to my own notebooks. No anger remained, only gratitude for having cared so deeply, even if I was not the one he could love completely. That night, I looked out at the city lights flickering in the dark outside my window. I felt a kind of hope, a delicate, cautious hope that, like the lilies I once kept, new things could grow in places where sorrow had lived. I whispered into the quiet, "Thank you, life, for giving me another chance to belong to myself." And from then on, each day was a step forward, some slower than others, but all leading toward a future that was still mine to write. It's been a year now since that morning when everything changed. Sometimes it feels like only yesterday. Other days, it feels like a distant dream from another life. The healing has taken time. It still does. I sit here, by my kitchen window, the one that looks out onto the leafy street below. The world has gone on moving, children coming home from school, neighbors carrying groceries, laughter echoing through the open air. I have changed, too, in small but powerful ways. My apartment is quieter, yes, but it is also peaceful. I never imagined how much strength grows in silence once you stop being afraid of it. I wake each day and make tea for myself. The tiny act of setting just one cup on the table is no longer sad. It is a promise to care for my own heart in all its broken and hopeful parts. Life's routines have returned, but everything feels a little different. I smile more easily, even at strangers. I accept help when it comes. I call my parents every week, and sometimes I laugh at old memories instead of wishing I could change them. I walk slowly through the market, noticing the details, the colors of fruit, the scent of flowers, the sound of distant music. At work, I find joy in helping others, in recommending books that once carried me through long nights. I let warmth find me, wherever it can. Some nights, I still revisit old memories. I see Arun's gentle smile, the way he used to brush rain from my hair, the quiet dinners we shared. I remember the pain, too, the days I wanted so badly to be enough, the silence that grew too thick to cross. But now, when those memories come, I don't fight them. I let them bloom and fade away, knowing they are only part of my story, not its end. Letting go of love is one of the hardest lessons life can give. But if you hold it gently, if you treat your own heart with kindness, you find the pieces can come together again, not as they were before, but as something new. When I walk into my home now, I see pictures that I have chosen, friends and family, places I visited, even the paintings I created when I needed to remember I could still begin again. My life is mine. My story is my own. If someone asked me now what I learned, I would answer softly and with certainty. You cannot erase the past, and you cannot fill someone else's empty spaces with your own hope. Sometimes, loving quietly, without expectation, and then letting go with grace is the strongest thing you'll ever do. I am not who I was before. I am stronger, wiser, and still willing to see beauty even after great loss. In time, I have learned to forgive, not just him, but myself, for staying, for hoping, for wanting so much to heal a heart that was not mine to fix. I don't know what comes next. None of us ever really do, but I trust myself to meet the future with open hands. Now, when I close my eyes at night, I am not searching for someone missing. I am resting in the gentle company of my own courage. My home is quiet, but it is full of possibility. And if this story finds you at a time when your heart feels heavy, I hope you know what I had to learn the hard way. We are all allowed to begin again. We are allowed to let go of hurt, to forgive, and to trust that even on the grayest days, hope will always find its way into the smallest cracks. Life does not promise perfect endings, but it always offers new beginnings for those who are brave enough to gently close one door and open another, even if their hands are trembling. So, tonight, like every night now, I pour one cup of tea, sit by the window, and watch the city lights dance. I thank the past for what it gave me, and I look forward, heart quietly strong, to whatever sunrise comes next.